Hello, good afternoon everyone. My name is Charlene. The community manager managing the hangar. Welcome to the hangar by NUS Enterprise. So today we are very honored to have Carl of Hatmill Group. He's also the co-founder and one of the content creators for SGAG and SGAG. So he will be sharing with us his journey and about how also he created this content for SGAG. So keep your questions to the panel discussion at the very end of this session. We have some food out there later after the session, so feel free to stay back to network. Yeah. So without further ado, I'll give the stage to Carl.
Hi guys, what's up? How many of you are from NUS? Hands up. How many of you are aspiring startup owners or entrepreneurs? Just one? Just one? Two? Right, so the rest of you are just here to hang out or get free food. Students, right? So I want to thank Charlene and her team for inviting me. I actually attended some of these Kopi Chats when I wanted to become a startup owner myself sometime in 2013, 2014. I was not lucky enough to be in NUS, so I applied to NUS and NUS very graciously accepted me to hang out at Block 71. They incubated me and I attended the Kopi Chats and I loved every one of them because when you're in that hustle mode, the first thing you want to do is to meet like-minded people. And that was a platform that I had the opportunity to be a part of, and it's benefited me in many, many ways. So one of the things that I remember was I attended the Kopi Chat, and then I met this guy who was sitting next to me. He was like in his 40s, and then when I finished the Kopi Chat, someone came up to me. I was like, "Oh, you know who you're sitting next to?" I was like, "No idea," right? And I got his name card, so I looked at the name card, and it said James Tan. So I was like, "Oh, who's this guy?" You know, there's a Chinese name card, and he was like, "He's the most successful Singaporean entrepreneur in China, and he ran a listed company on Nasdaq." And I was like, "Holy shit, are you serious?" So I end up writing him an email, and he becomes the first investor in my first company because of NUS Kopi Chat, right? So if you're sitting next to somebody you don't know, he might or she might be your next investor. So most of you would not have heard of Hatmill Media Group. Hatmill Media Group is simply the holding company that we started to house all the companies that we built over the years. We started SGAG in 2012 at the back of a classroom, and eventually we ran it as a business in 2015 full time. And today we have 4 different companies under the group. We have SGAG, we have SGEek, which is our new baby. It's about consumer tech content. It's about whether I should buy the new phone, you know, all the videos and memes. And we have MGAG, of course, and most recently another new baby of ours, which is PGAG, based out of Manila. So we started in 2012 in class, and it was not meant to be a business. It was simply just something we did for fun. And we ended up just sharing content that you know people resonated with. And in 2015, my first startup failed, the one that you know I got invested in from an investor I met at Kopi Chat. And I had this page that had 1 million people that was coming through every week. And I was like, when you're running a startup, it's like all about metrics, it's all about traction. And my first company had no traction, like we had nothing. But then I had this page that had about 1 million people coming through every week. And I was like, man, how do you make money on Facebook, right, with 1 million people? On YouTube, if you have 1 million views, YouTube pays you, but nobody pays you on Facebook. So we started to think about the possibilities of actually doing something with a Facebook page. And immediately we went to some professors from business school, right? As a student, good student, you go to a professor, hey, prof, what should I do? Right? So prof's like, oh, sell t-shirts, sell merchandise. We tried that, didn't really work, and we hated packing, and we couldn't afford a fulfillment company, so that we scrapped that. And we were lucky enough to sort of stumble upon a business model that BuzzFeed actually started, which was kind of make branded content together with brands and share it on your platforms that was still meant to be funny, still meant to be entertaining, and that worked well for us. So we continued to grow, and we started SGAG in 2016 really as an experiment because, again, I was attending all these conferences, Tech in Asia, Echelon, E27. I was going for all these conferences, and everybody who sits down, you look at the heroes, they are like, oh, regionalization, Southeast Asia, Southeast Asia. So we decided to really take that first step of faith and go to Malaysia. And I knew nothing about Malaysia. I don't even go there. So literally the first time I went there as an adult, not on holiday, was to really see how I could open a company. And we were lucky enough to find some really crazy people to start a business with there. And that's known as SGAG today. So all in, we have close to about 80 people now in 3 countries, with 4 companies under our group. And these are like super, super young people, right? So we take a lot of them fresh out of school, from NTU, SMU, and US. We take a lot of them from random places as well. And we look for people with a bright spark of creativity, and we give them an opportunity to create content with us. And so if we really go back to where we started, the first year of owning and running this page was really interesting because you probably have read this somewhere, we made a meme about McDonald's running out of curry sauce, and that was the first ever meme that we did. But what people don't really talk about is what happened after that, because all our content fell flat after that very first meme. And we had to wait until like January 2013 when the government announced that there would be 6.9 million people in Singapore when we started, and that's when we started making these memes, right? So we started thinking about how 6.9 million people would live in Singapore, with the infrastructure that we had, and trains were breaking down, people were upset, and maybe if we didn't have them, we would have to cling on to the side of the trains. And then it went flat again, right? So we were completely like no news, low news month a year, and then June happened in 2013. If you remember 2013 June, PSI was like 400, right? The haze was super bad, and everybody's work got cancelled. School got cancelled, right? If you're in school, PE was like cancelled. I think they even stopped school back then, right? And so everybody was stuck. So we started making these memes like, hey, like if you're a tourist, you come to Singapore, this is what you see, you wasted your trip, I'm so sorry. And even Sun Wukong, right? Sun Wukong was journeying to the west, and he went through MBS, then he got lost. And this one appeared on the front page of Straits Times, and we went home and we were like, Mom, I made it on the front page of Straits Times in full color. So this one was really cool. And over the years, we made more and more of these things, especially when Joseph Schooling won gold, right? And it was a height of Pokemon fever. So he was like an evolution of Pokemon himself, like the Magikarp evolved into a full-blown Gyarados. And he ain't need no candy because he got a gold medal, right? So the guy's got a gold medal. We did this like 10 minutes after he won, and it was amazing. Like it just blew out, and we had so much fun, right? So we made a lot of memes at the start, and that's great and all. But what really, really is interesting for me and for perhaps some of you is that if you think back to 2015, right? No tech platform had successfully built a platform that was great for video on mobile, right? You had YouTube, which was great for maybe iPad viewing or laptop viewing, but it was not mobile friendly. And Twitter launched Vine, and Vine failed, and then Instagram launched videos, and then video on Instagram is still kind of like meh. So Facebook launched autoplay for the first time, right? And everybody would remember like freaking out because they were just burning your data. And then obviously the telcos were super happy, right? Because your bill just gets really expensive. But for us, we had a page that had like 300K followers or something like that. And we saw the potential to storytell in a different format. And the stories that we tell are not so serious, right? Because we're not filmmakers, we're just a bunch of guys who like to share jokes. So we started thinking about ideas like how could we prank people or do things via video. And if you have seen this video, if you haven't seen this video, we actually go to Hougang during the height of the Pokemon Go fever, and we go to the middle of Hougang where everybody's playing Pokemon, and we shout Snorlax, and then we run. And I'm on top of the HDB with my phone, and we just record a few hundred people following after us, my co-founder Xiaoming, and that was all we did, right? And we got 5.4 million views. We ended up on CNN and stuff like that. And we were like, wow, one of our early videos, and that really opened up the potential for us, videos. So we started thinking about videos. We started thinking about how we could entertain people through videos or share a joke through videos. And we started to make a lot of videos, right? So if you saw this one also, this one we started talking about how it's really annoying when you walk in Uniqlo, and then they go, okay, Uniqlo! Right? And then we're like, oh, right? So we started to make this parody like, hey, what happens at the Uniqlo job interview, right? You just need to shout, okay, Uniqlo, super loud, and then you get the job. So we started making these really, really short clips, and they started to take off. And that was a huge opportunity for us to really think about what we could do in this space. And so we had SGAG, right? So we started SGAG, and instead of just doing memes, we started to think about videos right from day one. What could we do in the same nature that only Malaysians would get? Because I'm not Malaysian, I didn't grow up there, but we wanted to work with people who grew up there and knew Manglish instead of Singlish, you know what people are talking about, what people are buzzing about. And so we started making all these kind of videos with them, and they would take off, and it was super fun, right? So if you're giggling, probably you know Andrew Pa. So he's one of the guys that we met and hired along the way. And so we also have a new vertical, SGAG. That was our first attempt this year, and moving into a non-human space where because we saw the media landscape, and I grew up in one of those generations where I consumed traditional media. I would rush home to watch Phua Chu Kang. I would go to the newsstand and buy my favorite magazine after school. But a lot of the tech media was still stuck in that generation where you had to buy T3 stuff, magazines, and we saw that tech companies didn't have an opportunity to reach young people through social, and they didn't really know how to because everything was still print, right? So we decided to take a jab at that, and we just got back from New York to launch the Note 9. So it's been pretty fun, but still a long way to go for us. So we're in school, right? I have to talk about serious things in school, right? And so the question is, why Southeast Asia? When we looked at our audience, we saw this really young population, and the idea was to think about Southeast Asia and scalability, because that's what startups do, and that's what we think about. And so I read this report via Google and Temasek that launched in 2016, and it talks about why Southeast Asia. And last month I was at Wild Digital in KL, and they talked about how we had officially crossed the 400 million mobile user mark in this part of the world. 400 million people on mobile phones, on mobile data. And that's insanely huge, right? And everybody's super young. 70% of people in this part of the world are below 40, right? And super young population. Everybody who's coming online is skipping a generation of computers. They're going straight to the mobile device. And the ad market is booming, right? So traditional media, if you think about traditional media, has been around for years. Like newspapers have been around hundreds of years. You would have TV that's been a dominant medium for many, many, many years. And the way that you would reach mass consumers has been the same for the last 50 years of Singapore's existence until the last 5, right? The last 5 has really, really, really changed super quickly. If you really think about the traditional forms, everybody is so used to doing the same thing, like buying a print ad, like buying a TV slot, and then suddenly you're not reaching people anymore. And that's really, really scary because it takes time to shift budgets, it takes time to shift business models. And so we saw this opportunity that we could jump in really, really quickly. So firstly, millennials, like I suppose everybody in this room, none of you are rushing home at 7 to watch your favorite show because everything is simply on demand through mobile, if not through whatever device, smart device, right? You go on Netflix, you can watch a show, whatever show you want, anytime you want. I never had that opportunity growing up, right? I had to watch what the TV station told me to watch, and then while watching it, I had to watch ads that I didn't want to watch, but still had to watch because it was free to air. But nowadays, you watch Stranger Things. Maybe you watch the latest Meteor Garden anytime. And if like 5 minutes in, the guy is not handsome, close the show. Watch another show, look for a hotter guy, right? So it's changed so much and it's totally crazy, right? And brands are not sure how to reach people anymore because all these dominant mediums simply don't work. And so the academic side of things has also not caught up with how we're going to reach these people. So there was this business model problem that we solved, the business problem, because of the mobile phone, right? And so we started seeing, hey, as an ecosystem player, if we could create content that was sort of in line with what users wanted, in line with what brands wanted, maybe magic could happen. And so our solution to that was to really think about how we could cross-pollinate tech data and creative individuals in a single ecosystem where they would be able to create content that was different. Deploying an asset-light agile creation approach. So if you think about your Airbnbs, Airbnb does not own real estate. Uber does not own vehicles, right? You don't actually need the physical assets to build a company today. So everything is layered through tech. And we thought the same for content creation. We don't need big studios. We don't need huge superstars. We don't need all these things to actually reach a lot of people. Like the problem that SPH has is that they have all these massive print facilities that are really expensive to maintain, right? So we don't need that. All we need is simply a mobile phone or DSLR, short, highly entertaining, that will be consumed through mobile. And that was really, really powerful. So I think it goes back to the video of how we created the Pokemon video, where simply a mobile phone, an idea, could really bring millions of people through. So this is entrepreneurship talk. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my journey, right? So I'm no different from you guys. I was at a Kopi Chat a couple of years ago, and I really wanted to do something after graduation that was different. I didn't want to get a job. I had some job offers here and there, nothing too exciting. And I was like really interested in this entrepreneurship space. Should I start a company? What will I do? How do I get resources? And is it worth it? Because there's so much risk, right? Like, what if it fails, right? That's what all Singaporeans think about. And so I spent my last year in school using SGAG as a project because I was in the entrepreneurship track in SMU, and I realized that every entrepreneurship mod in SMU is basically the same. You go in there and you have to come up with a business plan, make some fake forecast on some explosive revenue growth, which is bullshit, and then pitch it. And every mod is the same. I did like 5 mods or 4 mods, which is the same shit, right? And I'm like, what's the point? It's a waste of my time. So I basically packaged SGAG into a business plan, and I reused it 4 or 5 times. And we scored A, right? So it was great. It was a win-win. We saved a lot of time, and that got us out of school. So getting out of school, we were very lucky to really build something that has created a little bit of impact, right? We're still a very young business, we're still a very young team. But the journey has been really quite life-changing for me because it's been about 3.5 years, and last year we were nominated as Forbes 30 under 30 in Asia, and that was just a phenomenal experience because we got to meet other really cool people. And I remember at the Forbes conference in Boston, I was sitting down, and then there was this guy next to me, and his name is Carl too. And I'm like, hey Carl, what do you do? And then he's like, oh, I run a mobile phone company called OnePlus. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's legit. Right? And I'm like, what do you do? I'm like, I make memes. So that was a crazy experience, right? And we got to hang out with some really cool people. That's John Scully. John Scully is the Pepsi co-CEO who fired Steve Jobs. Right, so I got to hang out with him, and he's super humble, 80-plus-year-old. And then the first thing I meet him is, "What do you do?" Right, and he tells me about how at 80 he started his next company, and it was doing $300 million in revenue in its first year. At 80, right? I'm like, why am I here? And then I got to hang out with Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary V is super cool. He came over to our office in Singapore. When he came by a couple of months ago, and we talked about how it's on his blog. So we ended up on Gary V's blog, and we talk about audio content and whether podcasts are going to take off. And we're doing some work with him. And I got to meet Casey Neistat as well. So Casey is super cool. Obviously, you guys know who he is. And I just want to quickly share 3 lessons that I learned because I want to spend more time on the Q&A. I think the first thing is, like, I'm not super smart. Like, I was a pretty shit student. Like B's and C's all around. I really struggled through year 1 in school, and I'm not smart. Like my co-founders probably less smart than me. So he's not smart as well. We're just like normal dudes, right? And we were really lucky because we met a lot of smart people. So when we were two of us, right, we literally said, look, we need some smart fresh grads who knew what they were going to do, who knew like how to handle media, because we are not smart enough. So we went to a uni, not this one, and we went there and we looked for the top group, and we said, look, we're going to make you guys job offers. Like, we looked for the top FYP group, and we said, look, we're going to make you job offers. I have nothing. I can't give you a salary that will match what people were going to offer you, but I can offer you a dream, right? I can offer you a dream to build a company that will be something one day. And I guarantee you that within 3 years, you would supersede your peers who are grinding it out in the corporate world. You're going to be having a hell of a time, right? So out of 4 of them, 2 of them said yes. And they've been with us since. And they currently run the businesses for us. And these are the first 5 of us, actually. And this was like our first month as a company. And today, the 3 of them actually run the entire business for us. That's why I can be here at 6 p.m. And now, we have some even more incredible people. Like, we have people who have been in the film industry for 15 years, and they have made some of the best films in the region, and they're here to help us really up our craft and help us share their experience and mentor our teams and do crazy things with us. So great people is super important. And we're not smart enough. I'm not smart enough. You're probably not smart enough. Maybe smart enough for some of you. But you need to find really, really great people and find like-minded people to work together. The second thing is that I think as a Singaporean born and bred individual, we're always told, like, you're going to fail. If you fail, it's the end. You go to ITE, If you fail, you get streamed to EM3. But if you do well, you get like higher Chinese, and like you get all these extra access to different languages and whatever. And I think people who have been hit get really pessimistic, like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm streamed here. I suck, right? But I think what we really learn is that optimism and just a ton of hard work, no matter where you start from, is actually the winning formula. A lot of hard work. And I think Singaporeans generally work hard, but I think a lot of us are very pessimistic, right? We're not optimistic enough. And that's perhaps a founder's curse sometimes, like radical optimism. And I like to spend my free time listening and learning from some of the best entrepreneurs or people that I know out there. And like, this guy really inspires me, right? Do you know who he is? It's Dr. Dre, okay? It's Dr. Dre. If you don't know who Dr. Dre is, then you probably heard Beats by Dre, right? The headphone company that Apple bought for like, what, $6 billion or something. He's the first black guy to become a billionaire. And he grew up from a hood, right? Like a real hood. And he was from like gangs and shootings. Most of his friends didn't make it through his teenage years. And he worked super, 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 super hard. And he was super optimistic. And he built his music career around Snoop Dogg, Eminem, No Doubt. They all came through him. And he's dropped some really incredible music. And he decides to build Beats. And Beats got bought out by Apple. And he becomes the biggest black entrepreneur ever. Right? And if you want to find out more, there's a new series on Netflix called The Defiant Ones. It talks about his journey in becoming the first black billionaire. Like, I love basketball, so I watch a lot of LeBron James. Like, this guy is the world's most hated athlete, right? He's like the greatest, but people hate him, right? But he's super hardworking, even though he's born with talent. And if you really look at his life, talent means nothing without the work that he puts in. Like, he works super hard, and he's super like just focused, not on the hate, but on everything else that he wants to achieve. And that optimism and that hard work allows him to win. And closer to home is this guy. You guys know this guy, right? So this guy is one of my idols. And when I was laying in bed, being a entrepreneur, and I remember I was watching YouTube videos. That's what we do, right? Lay in bed, watch YouTube videos. And he gives this talk at Stanford or Harvard. And he says this thing in Chinese, right? 年轻人晚上想千条路，早上起来走原路, right? So basically means like, before you sleep, all these young people think about 1,000 paths that you want to take tomorrow, and then you wake up and you take the same bloody path, right? And then I'm like, shit, that's me. That's me. So I woke up and like the next morning I was like, I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do something towards achieving my dreams. And I actually signed up for coding bootcamp, right? Because I graduated with no skills whatsoever, completely useless. And I was like, I need to do something to get where I want to be. And I took up coding bootcamp because of this guy. Super hardworking. If you watch some of the clips of him as an English teacher talking about the vision he had for Alibaba, it's exactly what Alibaba is today. And that's like crazy, right? And even his co-founders, Lucy Ping, for example. Lucy is like was the group CEO of Lazada. When they bought Lazada, she runs the business. So hard work, optimism always wins. And the last point before we go on is do what you can. I think I want to let Casey talk about it. If you haven't watched this video, I just stole it from his YouTube channel, and he says it the best.
To the haters, the doubters, my 7th grade vice principal, to everyone who's ever told anyone with a dream they can't, this video's for you. Keep your head down, follow the rules, do as you're told, play it safe, wait your turn, ask permission, learn to compromise. This is terrible advice. If I were to write an autobiography, a book about my life, one title that would work would be Do What You Can, because that idea encapsulates everything I've ever done. Like when I wanted to move to New York City, my dad was like, you can't, you don't have any money. Or when I first said I wanted to make movies, it was, you can't, you didn't go to film school. I want to have a TV show, you can't, Casey, you're not pretty enough. And to go even further, like if I were to characterize what this new generation of content creators and filmmakers, what we all do on YouTube and everywhere else, we do what we can. You can't be an action movie filmmaker, but you get your parkour friends to dress up like video game characters, jump off some buildings, and you can. Right, Devin? Yes. You can't have a talk show, but you have a webcam and you can. Beautiful bastard. What?
This is my first YouTube video ever.
Next thing you know, you're interviewing the president.
I heard that you're going to be out of a job soon.
Maybe I'll start a YouTube show.
That's what I'm thinking.
You can't fly around here and forget about your market. But if you like skateboards, PVC pipe, great outfit, you get your call, and you can. What do you think? You don't need gear, you don't need trucks or a crane, you don't need some big expensive camera rig that never works. When you're a creator, you don't need someone in your ear telling you what you can and can't do.
I'm not gonna do that word.
What you can and can't say.
I accidentally did the shocker. Oh my god.
They call us gamers, influencers, internet famous. What the fuck does that mean? But we know something they don't. You can start a blog or a makeup channel. We'll travel around the world with gigantic piano playing in beautiful places for interesting people. When you're a creator, all you need is your phone, an internet connection, and a good idea. A story you want to share, something you need to say.
Confidence is within
And
yourself.
then the rest is history. If you do it right, you get the day job. Make friends from places you've never been. Meetups, collaborations.
Just the boys and 2 video cameras.
A life moving so fast, it's so full, you won't even have time to process it. So to my fellow creators, I say, keep creating, keep doing the work. And never forget, you don't have to listen to anyone, because in this new world, no one knows anything. The haters, the doubters are all drinking champagne on the top deck of the Titanic, and we are the fucking iceberg. Do what you can.
Great video, right? So, I mean, he says it the best. Do what you can. And I think a lot of you from school, thinking of starting a business, this ecosystem is awesome, right? So with that, I'm going to invite Lei up and we'll do a Q&A. Thank you.
guys are wondering why I'm here interviewing him. So actually, I started a YouTube channel a while back. Now I have around 80,000 subscribers. I'm getting around 900,000 views a month. So I'm actually like one of you guys here as a creator, asking him questions and really understanding how is this journey like, coming from a creator perspective. How do you start as a creator and you can build a business. So we've received a lot of submits from you guys before we started this event, and many of you guys, one of the biggest themes you guys asked us to ask Carl is that, I want to start this juicy question is, how do you guys make money, right?
Right. So as I talked a little bit on the slide, how we make money is that we create branded content for a brand partner. So if a brand comes to us and they are launching a new product or a new service or a new whatever, we would take that in and create a piece of content for them that will be launched on our platforms in collaboration with, and we take a project fee for that. So that's how we make money.
Do you approach those brands yourself, or do they find you, or?
Well, I mean, if like I'm a complete sales nerd, and I think one of the things that I started to do from day one was that how are we going to monetize? Because I was not prepared to raise venture funding, because I had raised venture funding before and I knew how difficult or how life is going to be like after, and I felt that in this new thing that we were trying to do, I didn't want any venture funding. So I sort of just went door to door selling people a piece of content, and it starts from that, right? It starts from just doing your door-to-door sales, cold emailing, whatever you read on whatever sales book you buy, it's probably true. You just need to put in the hard work. And soon enough, we managed to get word around enough for people to start contacting us. So that was pretty cool. So we didn't have to do so much sales, and people just started coming. So yeah, it just starts from the basics.
I think it's just amazing. Telling jokes, making a living telling jokes, it's just amazing. One thing I admire most about SGAG is that you guys are as much of a creative agency as a startup. Startup is in a very competitive environment, but at the same time you need to get the creative juice flowing. How do you, as the CEO of the company, how do you manage? How do you strike this balance between these two seeming very different?
Great point. I think, like, I have a co-founder, and he was my JC classmate, right? So we grew up, we spent like the larger part of our lives together, and we had started a few businesses together, failed, and in fact, we failed so badly that I swore never to work with him again. And I know him inside out, and he's like a super creative guy who he makes all the content. And I was in this whole tech startup business thing, and I told him, like, dude, like what we have as a page could become a startup. And he was like, no, like I don't want this startup terminology slapped on my back. I want to make this a creative shop, right? And so there is that balance in the sense that we don't think of ourselves as a tech company or a startup company. And in fact, we're not, right? We're a little bit of everything. We're not fully tech, but we rely on tech. We are a startup in many ways, but we're also like a creative agency in many ways. Some people call us a creative agency, some people call us a media company, some people call us a startup. And in reality, I think we are all three, right? And that gives us the ability to be a little bit fluid in terms of how we want to say it. Like if I'm coming to an event like that, we'll say startup because then people will listen, right? If I call myself a creative agency, nobody will give a shit, right? But if I go into advertising space and I say I'm a creative agency, people are like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I think in reality, businesses today don't fit into traditional buckets of what business terminology should be, because it's just so disruptive that it cuts through different layers. And so for people who are building new businesses, you will find yourself kind of like in an awkward space where, yeah, this applies to me too, or that industry, that conference also applies to me too. And I guess that is the nature of businesses today. Like, it's so disruptive that it just changes the traditional norms of what a business or what an industry should be.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you 100%. I think one of the secrets, like a secret sauce, I think you guys have from my brief conversation with you before this session and your presentation, that, you know, regardless, you have a very, like a magnet. You can attract a lot of people who are talented, like your co-founder. Although you vowed not to work with him again, in the end, you can work with him and really create SGAG. And also, just now you were mentioning to me one of your teammates who creates some kind of arts with stick figures, and you also find this amazing guy, and he created one of the very famous SGAG contents on the platform. So how do you find people like that? How do you perhaps how do you find people like among these audiences?
Yeah.
Will be able to.
Great question. I mean, it's never easy, and it goes back to the same fundamentals of the door-to-door knocking strategy, right? I think in our first days, right, you saw the picture of the first 5 of us, and I talked a little bit about how we went to like schools and pitched students to join us. It was really hard because like at that size, like every intelligent fresh graduate would get job offers before you graduate. That's a fact, right? So if you're graduating, you don't have job offers, then you're screwed. I'm kidding. So yeah, but that's the fact. Every fresh grad who's intelligent enough would have like a handful of jobs waiting for you. And so we were like, what were we gonna offer? So we gave them a dream, and the first 3 joined. And when the first 3 joined, it's like, okay, then how are we gonna get the next 5? Because like, who wants to work with 5 people in a small little smelly office that does not have free food and chefs cooking for you and like a fancy view of Marina Bay? You know, we were in like a garage kind of concept in Ubi, you know, and like we had nothing. So like I had to be really creative. One thing I learned from Slack was unlimited leave. So we have unlimited leave, and I'm like, can other companies give you that? And they're like, whoa, that's not bad, huh? Unlimited leave. And the reality is that a lot of people join because of unlimited leave, and very few people actually took leave because it was a startup and people were hardworking, and so like the average number of days taken was like 10 in the first 15 of us. So we had to be really, really creative, and we had to look for people who didn't want a normal path. Like if I convinced somebody who wanted to like become the next PermSec, it would be a bad fit, because like your life will be miserable. There's no structure, there's no pay increment at the start. You know, it's just like they call it ramen profitability, right? It means you just eat instant noodles all day long, and that's what we did. We didn't pay very well. And so we didn't look for people who wanted to become PermSecs or like corporate CEOs. We looked for people who probably didn't know what they wanted to do, had a creative spark, had some creative streaks in them, and perhaps was jaded or upset with the fact that they had to give up creativity to work in a corporate world. That's when we said to them, hey, look, you don't have to. Like, we're trying something here. Perhaps you could be creative and make a living out of it and build a career around it. And when that proved to be validated in the first year and second, eventually, when we hit like 30, 40 people, it became a lot easier, because the alumni networks of the people who had joined us, they would come back and they would realize that, hey, it is true. Like, there's a group of people who are creating random stuff that has a hell of a time doing that, and now they manage regional teams, which has a bit of a corporate flavor to it as well, like business travel, regional team management, regional offsites, and stuff like that. So we inject a little bit of corporate as we were growing, so that it gives people like hope and perhaps the confidence in the company that they're not here wasting 3 years of their lives being hippie, that they're actually building something that has progression, because every Singaporean is like, progress for our nation, right? And there is progress because the team is growing, things are growing, and so there are opportunities, and that attracts more young people to join us. So again, it's as simple as following the textbooks, right? Just door to door, sell a vision, and then get people like-minded to jump on board.
Just now when I was listening to your presentation, I feel like one of the things that touches me is the phrase you said, you're looking for great people. So I was wondering for an organization like yours, like SGAG, like Pat Media, what kind of qualities they're looking for? What do you define as great, right?
Right. So I mean, on a very broad spectrum, without focusing on any job role, I think great people are people who are just super, super, super determined to win. Like I love to look for winners. I'm super competitive in whatever I do. Like even if I play FIFA with you, I need to destroy you. And I look for people with a win streak, because if you're like, I mean, we're a small company. If we screw up, right? If we screw up too much, 6 months down the road, the reality is we might not even exist. And that's for every startup, every small company, versus like a conglomerate. I can spend hundreds of millions of dollars and still the company would be fine. But if you're a small startup, if you keep screwing up because you make shitty decisions, you could be wiped out within a year or less. So I wanted to look for people who fundamentally wanted to win, and they wanted to win in all things. Even if it's creating a video, they would want that video to go viral or do really well. If they were to close a sales presentation or sales meeting, they would want to close, and they would find whatever way to close because they wanted to win. Or if they had to convince somebody to join the team, they would do their hell best to make sure that person joins the team. And there are people like that around you, like this person is just gonna win. And so I realized that because building a company is not all that easy, it's super, 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 super hard. And you're gonna fail and fail and fail and fail. But it's not how many times you fail, but it's really about how many times you stand back up and you fight to win that next fight. Right? And I think when I characterize the great teammates that I have, it's really looking at people who just never get knocked down. Like there can be 10,000 things in your face, like just pulling you down, but you just need that person to stand up and punch harder the next time. Right? It's like that Rocky analogy when he screams at his son. Like it's not about how hard you get hit, but how many times you can stand up again and again and again and again. Right? So that's what I really love about candidates, that we spot this flair in them, and over time you can see it.
Interesting. So just now you're talking about finding great people. One of the summit that we always see, like among like I think 60 entries, we have like 20 of them asking you not about other people but about you. What inspires you to do this? What makes you start this?
Well, I personally have always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So like, right before I entered uni, I started a business, a very small business. I was tinkering in all sorts of stuff. From live journal days, my ex-girlfriend and I started one of the early blog shops. So there was Love Bonito, and then there was us, right? So we were one of the first few to start a blog shop. And then I broke up because it didn't work out. She came to NUS. I had to stay far away. And I realized that I'm not a fashion guy. I don't care about fashion, right? But that really caught the entrepreneur bug in me. And in uni, I actually started a real estate business. So I did real estate for like 4 years through uni, and I loved closing deals. I loved making money. But then I realized that, the real estate industry was really sort of closed off to the word impact. So I realized that real estate doesn't really impact people in the way that startups could. Because I was like looking at some of the coolest, biggest startups, and I realized that it was very impactful. The work that like Facebook was doing, Twitter was doing, Airbnb was doing, Grab was doing, whatever. There were millions and millions of people being sort of positively or negatively impacted by their work. So when we started looking at the Facebook page that we own, and I realized that millions of people were seeing our content, and it was very difficult for any metric to reach millions, right? Even if it's your bank account, be it your bank account or be it your Facebook page, as long as you get millions, it's something, right? So we saw that we had millions of people reached, and we started to look at that and ask ourselves what that meant. And we realized that the millions, not everybody's going to love us. Many people hate us, and that's fine. But for the large majority, there were people who loved what we did. And they perhaps giggled a little, laughed a little through the day when they saw the content. And that was impact to us. that was meaningful because suddenly the currency was not about how much money you earn, but how much laughter you could generate, how many laughs you could generate. And we had this vision where if we could make somebody laugh once a day and mimic that scale by millions, that would be amazing because we would bring so much laughter and joy to the world. And so that was really what we founded the company on, and that's really the vision today.
How do you see this SGAG progressed? Ever since the founding of 2014 and until now, how has the content changed?
The content changed a lot. I mean, we take a lot of feedback seriously. We look at a lot of trends that are moving, like videos. Now it's really all about perhaps more Instagram story style content. There was vlogging for a while. There was 360 for a while. We look at a lot of these trends and beyond like memes, beyond videos, we ask ourselves what's coming next. Fundamentally, how are people going to spend their time on their phones within the next 5 years? What are they going to be doing on their phones? What do they want to consume? And we also exist in a place where we started just wanting to make people laugh, but then we also realized that traditionally, if you look at Southeast Asia, the media companies are owned by government. They're all state-owned. They all have some sort of agenda to the people, and it's hard to really create really great TV shows with that kind of restrictions, and that's not their fault. So we, on the other hand, saw like Netflix just owning the shit out of everything, right? Every show that they made, and they were a DVD mail company, right? So Netflix started mailing DVDs to people, and now they're making like award-winning shows every season. So we saw that, hey, there was this thing with content creation that perhaps we could fill in a local space and learn from Netflix. Obviously, we are so far away, but perhaps we could take a step in that direction because nobody is making anything here. Like everybody's wanting to go to a bank, go to a law firm, become a doctor. Nobody's making weird shit, right? Nobody's thinking about making movies or content. So we were like, what if we could do that and move in that direction? So I think the fundamental thought of where we started from to where we are now and perhaps in the future, we're gonna keep changing. And I think that's another thing. Like we never thought we would get this far. Firstly, we never thought we would make videos and produce content at this scale. And looking at where we're going, we never thought that we would be looking at that scale as well. So it just keeps changing, and I think it's all about just adapting and scaling yourself as well in your mindset.
Just now before this session, I'll ask you the same question right here. How far are you guys willing to change, right? Because you guys started with SGAG, now you have MGAG and you have PGAG, and you started also the SGAG, right? So how far are you willing to push your content in the future?
So I think for us, it's really about understanding a lot more about the world that we live in, growing up as an entrepreneur a lot more and maturing in my business thought and business strategy. I think it was naive it's always naive for any founder, and myself included, that when you start, you think you know it all, right? Because I want to start a business. This is what I'm going to do. This is my business plan. Here are my 5-year projections. And then you realize after 5 months, it's all wrong, right? And then you're like, shit. But that's fine because you get hit and then you stand up again. And then you change, you start to make some tweaks, you start to adapt, you start to learn, and then perhaps you meet a mentor, right? And we met our mentor very, very late in the game, like a year and a half, 2 years in, and he gave us so much. And then we met other people who taught us new things. We attended conferences, and then we started adapting our vision. We started thinking about how far this could go. And so what we stay true to is really understanding who we are as founders. Like, I'm not a fashion guy, I talked about that. I'm not into like beauty blogs and stuff because that's not me. But I'm a geek at heart, so I wanted to start a geek channel, right? My co-founder is really into name jokes, so he started a lot of name jokes, kind of related stuff. And I guess it's always about the people we meet and the DNA and us growing up as founders as well, meeting the right people, doing the right thing. It's all about that journey together. So I wouldn't say like we want to be the largest cooking channel by 2020 because that's my vision of starting another vertical, right? But it's really about meeting people, exchanging ideas, finding the right people to run the right thing. So like SGAG is not run by us, it's run by a lady I met who was a tech journalist from SPH, and she wanted to, she was moved away from writing about tech to do something else, and we said, hey, why don't you come start a company with us? And it worked out because we got along, we love what like what ideas she could bring to the table, and then we started a company. So it's really, we see it as a lot of just jumping on trains and meeting the right people, jumping at opportunities and building things together.
Okay. That's on the how I see it, that's on the content side, right? So you're looking to possibly branch into SGAG, talk about technology because you're a geek at heart. But business-wise, do you have some strategy? Like, where are you guys going in the future? Are you guys discovering different places and talk about different?
So business-wise, I think firstly I talked a little bit about Southeast Asia. Maybe I'll go in a little bit deeper. I think most of us in this room are Singaporeans, or we live in Southeast Asia at least. And the idea, okay, so if you think about Southeast Asia and how Americans see Southeast Asia, I think there are no Americans in this room. Americans see Southeast Asia as, oh, it's the fastest growing region in the world. We need to move to Southeast Asia. And then they come here, they're like, shit. Within a 3-hour radius, people speak different languages, they eat different food, and man, it sucks in some places, and like some places it's super nice, and it's still uncomfortable. Because like if you go around America, around a 3-hour radius, it's generally the same, it's generally okay. But if you go to Southeast Asia, 400 million people, yes, market size is there, but it's so difficult to scale a business, right? And we feel that growing up in Singapore, I grew up in an international community, and I have friends that perhaps grew up from different countries, and that gave me a bit of context to learn how to talk to them, befriend them, and we sort of brought that into the business idea of how can we scale a regional business, because we think it's a lot more strategic to do it as Singaporeans from Singapore than to leave it to Western companies to do. So that's really our beachhead strategy.
Okay, so I think we're about time, so I'll probably end with one of the highly posted questions.
Yeah, everyone was a bit like, what's the next thing?
What's the next big thing for company?
You know what? If I could tell you that, right, I would be worth a lot of money, right? So if you really understand, like, and this goes to apply to all things, not just with content, but with stock markets, right? So if you really, I think I was reading this report recently, like everybody makes a bold prediction about a stock, and these are like experts and gurus and whatever. But how many people actually track how accurate were these gurus? And I think a study came out to say actually the accuracy is like super low. Like all these experts are all wrong most of the time. And that goes with the same for content creation. I think there are general macro movements into certain directions, but it would be wrong for me to say that I would know what to do. But what I know for sure is that as content creators, what we need to do is really to be super. So for example, the first person perspective of shooting via an Insta story is something that never existed until Snapchat invented it and then Instagram stole it. And the act of stealing it is all the difference, right? The act that Instagram copied it made Instagram the most popular platform today. And Snapchat is like, none of you use Snapchat, right? And Snapchat's stock is bleeding out. And so watching these movements and asking ourselves as a content company, like, what does that 15-second mean for me? How can I tell a vertical story within 15 seconds? Is something that's really important for all content creators in us. And that trend is going to change within the next 6 months. When somebody else is going to create a new format that's going to be completely different, and you need to be in tune to ask yourself, what is it in it for me in this format?
That's about it.
You want to open for the floor? Or?
You guys have more questions to ask?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi. Okay, so with all of the Facebook and Instagram algorithms going on, like some of the posts are not being seen and content is being hidden, even if it's good content. How do you rise above that noise? Do you have to pay ads?
Yeah, I mean, paying is a great way out. If you're rich, please do it. But if you're not, I think you have to read exactly what Facebook wants. And Facebook's obviously being a douchebag about this because they change their positions every 3 months or 4. And we've survived through like the last, 6 years of their evolution of the timeline. And and we're still getting traction, right? So people often just put a blame game on it, but I think what you really need to do is to adapt. So like Facebook likes stuff that your friends and family share now, and they like stuff that resonates with local communities. They don't like clickbaitish. They don't like stuff that perhaps directs traffic out of Facebook, right? So you need to really ask yourself, if you're publishing on a page, what are you going to do that's in line with what Facebook wants? Because they could not want your stuff tomorrow. And that happened to a lot of publishers. So a lot of publishers who were relying on traffic, suddenly Facebook doesn't want to direct traffic out anymore as much. And so you would see these sites get their traffic hit super, super high. And that's the same with YouTube, right? So YouTube, like PewDiePie made all these statements about this and that, closing in on last year or early this year. And you see how the controversy affected all the global community creators, because suddenly Facebook wants every piece of content to be brand safe. And at the YouTube summit, they didn't even feature any creators. They featured Vivo, and they featured all these like big media companies pages. They didn't feature the individual creators. And it was also a signal to creators that they had to be brand safe in order to monetize their content. So I think a lot of it, be it Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, you really have to understand the DNA of the platform, what they want as a vision for their platform, because it's very different. You cannot assume that YouTube is the same as Facebook. And you need to understand what they're trying to do with the community. And this changes every 6 months or a year, because they're also a really massive startup. And you know, the reality is that things get thrown out the window, people get hurt. So I just met a guy who worked at Facebook for the last 5 years, and he lost his job because Facebook doesn't want to partner media companies anymore. And that was what he spent 5 years doing. So he lost his job as a result of that. So at the same time, for us as people publishing, you need to really think about what they want and how you're gonna be part of that ecosystem. Because if you go head on, you're always gonna lose.
I guess we can go for a few more questions. Anyone?
My question is the second question basically. So like now that so many people are following you, definitely you cannot just post whatever you like, since you're now like became an influencer in the public. So with those constraints, how do you actually kind of decide that, all right, I should make this content. Okay, this content is not good for the public, because I see most of your content, some are even encouraging instead of funny, like the public service announcements.
So I think that question has a bit of a fallacy in itself. We exist in a part of the world where you are not free to create any kind of content, right? If you create the wrong content in this part of the world, be it in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, or Philippines, you could, depending on where you are, you could get killed. You could end up in a cement truck. You could be at Cantonment drinking coffee. And that is the reality of media in this part of the world, which is unlike the great big free speech America. And so a lot of content to begin with is curated. We cannot say anything, and we also have to be careful about what we stand for as a business, right? So we are non-political, we don't really care about politics, but we have to talk about politics sometimes as well to stay relevant. So I think it falls within a set of guidelines that we want to follow, and that is generally no sex, no religion, no race, right? So that's something we have no agenda on, and we have to stay super clear. As to what we do now with the limited resources, or with the resources that we have today, I think it's really about, is this going to drive us growth in any metric, right? So I think for any startup owner or any company owner, for that fact, given your limited resources, how are you going to optimize it? It's essentially an idea of optimization with your resources, and time is also a resource. And if we are in the content business, it's an optimization of time and monetary resources. And sometimes we make the wrong decisions. Sometimes the decisions made are not optimal because the content is not great, or maybe we made too much of some kind of content, or maybe we should have made more of another kind of content. And that's fine. The idea is not to be perfect. The idea is not to strive for perfection and not to think about perfection. So if you read the book Creativity Inc. by the founder of Pixar, you will realize that the most important part of a creative process is the failure. Okay, the most important part of the creative process is the failure, because if you don't fail, you don't know what you could have optimized for. So we are still super young. We are still failing like crazy every day. And the feedback matters. People are not shy about telling us that we suck. And that's actually really, really important because we need to know what people think so that we can do better.
Why don't we go for one last question?
So, since you're meeting with Gary, right, he's definitely gonna hammer on a lot about voice. Yeah, and it's like, so I want to see your opinion on terms of voice and how it's going to impact like us in the future, and together with yours as like a media publisher, right? Like, how would you transition the entire thing for the future in a sense?
Right. So, like, okay, so for those of you who don't know, Gary V has a very big podcast in the US. It's like #1 or something, and he is banking on audio, right? And basically, he feels that audio transitioning out of the radio ecosystem will make a super strong comeback by a podcast. So much so that it's going to be bigger than video, and that's what he's betting on, right? So that's why he's spending a lot of time creating podcasts. And when we talked about it, he was like, "Dude, you should open audio." We are a little bit different because Gary's content, he's like preaching to you, right? He's like giving you business advice and you're preaching. And I actually listen to some of his podcasts, and I can be doing that while vacuuming or on a Grab, reading emails. I can be listening to him preach. But for us as a humor or entertainment company, if we are going to do that, I think it's fundamentally a lot less engaging as per video. Like if you're going to translate, for example, a drama series into an audio experience, it's not going to be as exciting as watching a hot girl and a hot guy make out. Right? Oh, they made out. That's it, full stop, right? Versus watching it, I think that tingles your senses in many ways, and that can be from horror to comedy to drama, right? Visually, video is just super important. But I think from a business advice learning perspective, audio is quite powerful. Amazon has audible.com where you can buy audiobooks, and I think I personally didn't like it because I was trying to like read Ray Dalio's Principles book via audible.com, and he had so many quotable quotes, and I was just struggling to keep up with the quotes because I didn't catch it, and I had to rewind it, and I had to like write it down. I'm like, why am I doing this when I can just buy the damn book and just highlight it, right? So I think it works for some kinds of content, like Gary's kind of content, like even religious content, like sermons and religious meditation or whatever, it works. But for certain types, I think video is still more powerful, and I think it's only the beginning of video, right? If we really think about where video is going, a lot of that is moving into interactive video. A lot of that is moving into shoppable video, right? Like I think there's VSense, another NUS company here, is really moving into how can I transition my conversions from visual to intent within a span of a click or less from consuming a video. And I think that direction is really powerful. If we look at where Facebook is building its tools around, it's like shoppable videos and stuff like that. I think moving the conversion model from not just clicking through an article, but clicking through from a video is something that's super powerful. And if e-commerce can crack that, you're going to drive incremental sales everywhere.
So I think I'll end with one last question, which is, I think we have a pretty young audience here. So what are maybe some of them are thinking of whether to go to a bank or perhaps to go to SGAG. So there are tips for younger audience.
Right. So I mean, I wouldn't use my company as a benchmark, but I would say if you were thinking about starting a company or going to get a job, like what do you want to think about? And this is what I tell my interns who come in. Like if assuming you're a normal Singaporean, you live with your parents, you are comfortable, and by comfortable, my definition is a roof over your head, a meal that your mom would cook or your maid would cook, if you have a maid, even better, and you can have a good night's sleep, even if you have no money in your life, right? If you can do that, and I think a large majority of Singaporeans can, because we all come from a general, you know what I mean. If you can do that, take as much risk as you can in your 20s, because you're not going to be able to do that later on in life as much as you want to. And now is really the time for you to take risks. Like, I think a lot of us Singaporeans don't want to fail. I think it's really the failure that scares us more. But if you are able to really change your mindset and optimize yourself for risk taking in your 20s, you will be surprised, not just by how much you can learn, but the opportunities that will come to you, right? So to give you an example, before any of this happened, after my first failed company, of course I was super bummed out. I raised some money from a grant that I think NUS Enterprise helped me with or something like that. And I wiped out all the grant. I had no more money in my bank. I didn't pay myself for a year. My team disbanded. I had nothing left, right? And I asked myself, okay, I have a house to return to, a good night's sleep, my mom cooked dinner. I still have these things. And what was even more amazing is that before we decided to start a second business, in the interim, because I had started a company and I had met all these cool people through my year of really trying, I had a job offer from Google. I had a job offer from a 500 funded startup. I had 3 job offers. And I was like, wow, I had never had job offers in my life before because I had never applied for a job. So suddenly people were like, hey, you spent a year doing this. I think you could really help us. I think you could really value add to this part of the process for us. And suddenly I was like, wow, these opportunities just started coming. What I thought of as failure and what the world thought of as failure was actually, laced with a nice silver lining where opportunities started to come. And then when I started my second business, I realized that people who funded my first business or was a part of my journey in my first business could help me in my second business as well, in ways that I never thought they could help. And so that failed experience is something that is not actually failure. It's just a part of the process. And so I would say take risks in your 20s. Come to the hangar and work. It's beautiful here. It's so amazing. And just take all the risks and really pursue something if you have an idea. But if you don't, that's also completely fine. Like you don't need to shit on people who work in corporates, because I think a lot of startup people do that, like, oh, corporate guy, right? But corporate guys they make a good living. They have good opportunities to become intrapreneurs as well, where they create really amazing products within a large organization. Like if you think about GrabPay, you think about all the stuff that Grab is doing, those are led by entrepreneurs as well. And that is completely fine. You make a lot more money doing that, and you have a lot more of a comfortable life. So it's not wrong. It's completely cool. And it's really about choosing a place that you think you can learn best in your 20s. Because in your 20s, you shouldn't be optimizing for money. You should be optimizing for experiences and learning and taking risks.
Great suggestion. Why don't we put our hands together and so Carl and I will be hanging around, so if you have any more questions, ask Carl.
Yep, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.